After weeks of trying to solve the case of Annie K and the scientists, we finally learn the truth of what actually happened. As Liz and Navarro visit the Night Country where they have a spiritual awakening, let's break down and discuss the final 15 minutes and explain the ending of part 6 in the finale of True Detective Night Country. Now, to hear my thoughts on the full episode, you can click on the link on the top of the screen or click the link in the description of this video to see my entire scene-by-scene and episode breakdown of this finale. As the storm has come to an end, we watch as Navarro continues to help Liz, who's recovering after falling in the waters after they both faced their demons. We see Liz wishes Navarro a happy new year as she recalls the time Navarro talked about walking out and disappearing, and if she ever decides to do that in the future, to come back. I want you all to remember that line for later in this breakdown. As we watch Navarro talk about what Clark did and how she's been holding the hatch for a while, this sparks an idea for Liz to get the DNA of who or what tried to open the hatch from when Clark tried to hide. We see Liz uses liquid chemicals and finds the fingerprints of the last person to grab the hatch, and it's missing 2 fingers, just like the fingerprints found on the scientist's clothes, and surprise, surprise, it is Blair. But the question is, who knows who killed Annie K? As they head to their suspect. As they arrive to B's house, we remember that Blair has been staying there after getting into a fight with her ex-boyfriend. Now, you'll notice when B asks who wants to discuss what happened to the scientist, you'll see that B looks right past Liz and looks directly at Navarro. As Navarro answers with her full name, which means the return of the sun after a long darkness. As this is what lets them in, but I want to focus on Navarro, this is them allowing her to be in, and this having a double meaning. And making the narrative connection and taking the meaning of what that name means and applying it to the characters being in the darkness for most of the season, but having to return after their spiritual awakening after so long. But also pointing out the character arc for Navarro. Remember the scene back in episode 1 when she took the call about the fight at the crab factory and B asked her what her name was given to her? Or remember the time when we saw Navarro arresting Annie K and how the women treated her, and even thinking about the time when Oliver did the same thing. So for her to now have her name and to say it with such integrity and pride, this was a moment that she finally felt embraced. Now inside, B tells them that the scientist was the one that killed Annie K. Now for the last 6 years, they thought that it was the town, but they finally understood. As we cut to seeing B cleaning at the station one day as she discovers the hidden lab. As she goes down to the station, she finds that star-like piece of equipment, and while it's not too fully explained how she was able to make the connection, I would assume that it's because it's a small town, and how Annie K's body was found most likely got around in the townspeople. As we see one of them taking photos of Annie K's body from the files as they manage to figure everything out, very similar to how Annie K understood what the men were doing in collaboration with the mines, as they had everything they needed to finish their version of the story. Now, the reason they didn't report this or get the cops involved is because this would have changed nothing. As we see the women that we've seen throughout the show enter the room as they wanted to change the story and have a different ending. Now, as the story goes, we cut to seeing them together entering the station with guns in hand and taking each of the scientists one by one, and we even see the moment where Clark hid and locked himself in the hatch, and we see that it was Blair trying to open the hatch. I absolutely love the intense indigenous music in the background as we see this scene, because to me it just made it so much more satisfying to experience what's about to happen to these scientists. Now, Navarro flat out asks if these women killed them, which we see B responds by saying that they did it to themselves after digging into her home in the ice and killed her daughter and woke her. As she was saying this, we see them loading the scientists into the back of a truck. Now, on many occasions, we've spoken about the story of Sedna on this channel in previous breakdowns and her mythical lore being throughout this show, and pretty much confirmed in episode 4 of the True Detective podcast by its own creators. I want you all to take a listen to this clip.
The story of Sedna still influences our culture today. Many Inupiaq women have tattoos of lines on their fingers to honor Sedna. While the story is open for interpretation, I believe it shows that humans are not in control of nature and that you should always be respectful and a little bit fearful of things outside of your control. I think it also represents the power and independence of Inupiaq women who should be treated with honor and respect.
Now, connecting what you all just heard from that podcast and connecting to the story, the scientists not only disrespected the land, but also disturbed the nature under the ice, but they also killed a woman in the process. Which led to, if you want to call it the nature or spiritual supernatural beings, I believe this led to Sedna showing them ill will on their deaths. Now, as they arrive to the location, they force them to remove all their clothes and then make them walk out to the middle of the snow. As B says, if she wanted them, she would have took them, and she says that if not, their clothes were there and they could have survived, but they didn't because she wanted to take them. And I love this line here from B herself as she says to Navarro and Liz,
I guess she wanted to take them. I guess she ate their dreams from the inside out and spit their frozen bones.
as we see that it was B, the one that actually marked Lung with the spiral marking. Now, for weeks, we have been discussing how will the show explain what was actual reality and what was supernatural, and I think they did a really good job, in my personal opinion, at handling this particular subject, as the logical answer to the scientists was, well, without their clothes, they froze to death, but for those in the camp like myself that believe that Sedna and the supernatural and the spiritual were involved in the show, I believe that Sedna, or Mother Nature, ate them and spit them out, which would explain how their bodies were found. And whenever we would have a character referring to she, it was referring again to, my opinion, the supernatural, Mother Nature, Sedna, taking care of those bodies. But as we see B says, it's just a story. But I want to know in the comments, what do you all believe happened to the scientists? With no clothes, in that weather, of course they would have froze, and their eyes and their ears and their fingers would have been bitten off, and those were the effects of being out there with hypothermia, and that's the scientific reasoning. But for those that believe that supernatural were involved in their death, let's have this fun discussion in the comments below. As we watch the women gather together in the kitchen and they say to Liz, what's it gonna be? Will they take them in or will they let things be? As we watch Navarro says,
stories are stories.
Now I want to play you guys another part from that same podcast in regards to explaining the importance of these stories.
While some of these stories may seem shocking, Robin mentioned how preserving these traditions can ultimately bring connection and hope.
With these stories, I really want to try to bring back the history of our people. So many of them are lost, and I'm just trying to show that we had stories from a long time ago that are no longer being told by a lot of people anymore.
As Liz tells them that the case is officially closed and we see Navarro waits behind, you'll see B gives her this acknowledgement or a sense of welcome or belonging, something Navarro's been wanting for a very long time. But the question remains, what about Annie K's tongue? As B says, it's not a part of their story and has no clue what she's talking about. Now, was that just a clue from the dead? Now, to answer my own question, I believe just like Holden's polar bear, Navarro's mom's necklace, the song Squish and Shout, or the orange, and now this tongue, these were messages or signs from the dead, like Rose said, them trying to reach out to the living and helping Liz and Navarro solve this case. Let's have this discussion in the comments respectfully, because I can hear people screaming in the comments now, Liz and Navarro are going to allow these women to get away with murder, which technically they did kidnap the scientists and they took their clothes and let them walk in this bad weather. But again, they didn't technically kill them. But, you know, technicalities aside, I can hear you all saying that. And also, Liz and Navarro got away with murder with killing Wheeler. Same could be said about obviously Peter shooting his dad. But in my response, I will respond by saying, do you all feel the same way about the masterpiece of season 1 of True Detective? And I'm referring to when we saw both Marty and Russ kill the killers to end the loop. It was fine then, right? Again, remembering, time is a flat circle, and this show obviously paying homage and paying its respects to what came before it. And while in my personal life, I do not agree with police officers taking the law in their own hands, but in the context of True Detective season 1 and here in season 4, and seeing the situation and getting to understand these characters, it made sense to me how they handled the situation. But again, let's talk about it respectfully in the comments below. As it's May 12th, 5 months later, the first long day of the year, we cut to seeing Liz getting investigated about what actually transpired. As they question what happened to Hank, as she says it's an ongoing investigation, as Otis was killed by Hank, and the story goes, Hank was seen on tape following Liz and Otis, and he must have killed him after Liz questioned him. As she believes there's a deal gone wrong, and Hank must have had an accident and gone missing in the blizzard. As Liz says,
Come summer, we'll find him. We always do. Unless we don't.
We see Peter enters the room to give Liz some coffee as Liz tells them where his whereabouts was during all these events, which essentially clears his name of any wrongdoings. Now they bring up how strange it was that Clark died in the same way as the others, as Liz responds,
Incredibly odd. Some questions just don't have answers.
which was a great response from this character because if you think about her philosophy earlier in the season and how now this is the complete opposite of her famous saying of throughout the show that everything has answers if you look for the right questions. But more importantly to the character, it shows she's taken more of an acceptance of the unknown after what happened at the Salal station and having her spiritual awakening. Now, what about Navarro, as we cut to seeing Liz at Navarro's house to find out that she's gone? As we see, Navarro has left Liz with Holden's bear, the same one that she threw out a couple episodes ago. She also gave back Kavik his toothbrush, but that's not all. As Liz says, she came here looking for something and found it. As we see her walking in the snow, which is a callback to her walking away from all those times throughout the show in the snow as someone was calling to her, but this time she's found herself and she knows who she is and she can move on. As we see Liz looking at the video recording of Navarro took before Clark took his own life. Now in this video, it's him detailing everything about the mines and the pollution and the effects it had on the town, but also its people, and this message would end up getting leaked out. Now we don't see or hear the rest of the video, but one would assume that he confessed about Annie K's death as well. As we cut to seeing the mines have been shut down, as we see the same man from back in the opening scene of episode 1 of this show. As we see Liz say to the investigators that this town was here before the mines and it would be here long after. As we get our final shots of seeing Leah and Liz happy in the car, you'll also notice that Leah has the tattoos on her face, meaning that she's embraced her heritage, and also Liz accepts this. As Liz says, they will not find Navarro's body out on the ice, which to me meant that she's not going to be found dead like the others because she's more connected than ever before to her spiritual experience. We get to see Peter with his son, which to me implies everything worked out between him and Kayla. In our last shot, we hear them ask about the sightings of Navarro as we see Liz walking out to her balcony and says,
"Well, this is Ennis. Nobody ever really leaves."
As we see Navarro appears. Now, to kind of detail that moment of Navarro walking in the snow and also appearing on the balcony of Liz, remembering what B said, if she wants you, she'll take you. And if she doesn't, you'll survive. Now, if we follow the idea of this belief of allowing Mother Nature or the Mother of the Sea and Setna to get into this discussion and bringing it back to the character Navarro, she came out of the darkness and into the sun. It's taken a moment to speak about the supernatural, which again, I am firm into the count that the show was hinting at Setna being the supernatural entity in the town and the town's legend. Setna is the one that B was referring to in the caves. The Night Country picks and chooses who lives and dies. Now, wrapping up this video with my final review of the finale and my overall thoughts of the show, I've seen the finale 2 times at the time of this recording, and I can say that I definitely enjoyed the finale the second time around. Came to really appreciate the narrative of seeing both characters facing their past and dealing with their traumatic experiences head on. Liz being someone who shut herself off to people at work, or someone like Navarro who cared about solving Annie K's case all those years later, and looking at how she treated Leah, but seeing her growth, but also her belief in something more out there and her taking in the messaging from Holden. And also, as expected, what an incredible performance by Jodie Foster. Taking a moment to talk about the star of this show, and that's Reis as Navarro, a very complex and flawed character who was led by rage and shut herself off to others, but cared deeply about the only person she cared for, which was her sister Jules. And after losing Jules and her reflecting on her mother not giving her a name, to seeing where she ended up, to me was beautifully written and performed incredibly well. I can't wait to see what Kaylee has lined up next because she was a bona fide star in the show, in my personal opinion. I was a fan of Issa López prior to this show, but now I'm a bigger fan. Now, I know it wasn't for everyone, but the way she handled the supernatural and the grounded nature to the story, and mixed it with each episode with us questioning what was real and what wasn't, to me made this a thrilling story and a wonderful experience from beginning to the end. Now, I've said it in past videos, but my main criticism is the 6-episode format. It didn't allow some of the supporting characters to fully be realized. For example, Hank's story with his bride, and wanted more of his relationship with Peter instead. Peter and Kayla and their marriage. Leah's story feeling kind of rushed at points, but also not getting full closure to what happened with Kate and Connolly and even Oliver. I feel as though 8 to 9 episodes would have benefited for those characters and those subplots. Again, I wouldn't say I was unsatisfied, but it would have enhanced the series for me if we would have had more time with those characters and those subplots. So I would give this finale a high 8 out of 10. Great tension, the main questions getting answered, and seeing a good conclusion to our leads. Now, overall for the season, I'm going to give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. Overall, very pleased with the story, the sense of the horror. I love the environment and the mystery surrounding everything. And I would have to say this is my second favorite season, behind season 1, but also in front of season 3 and followed by season 2 being my least favorite season of True Detective. I would say my favorite character of the entire series is Navarro. My favorite episode was probably episode 5. That's going to end this video. I really appreciate you all taking the time to watch. Make sure to leave your overall thoughts of the ending, as well as any deeper meanings you all took away. And again, watch my full breakdown of the finale and my live thoughts during the after show. All are awesome. Stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.